Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. This is the story of how my peaceful suburban life was turned upside down when entitlement personified moved in next door. For context, I've owned my home for almost 20 years. It was my grandparents' place originally, and when they passed, they left it to me. I'd spent summers here as a kid and always loved the property, especially the massive oak tree in the backyard that's probably over 100 years old. The house isn't fancy, but it sits on nearly an acre of land with a shared driveway entrance that splits into two separate drives about 10 feet from the street. I work as a county surveyor, which turned out to be incredibly useful for what was about to unfold. I know property lines, easements, and local ordinances like the back of my hand. I also have connections with most of the municipal offices in our area, which came in handy later. Everything was perfect until about 8 months ago when the house next door sold. The previous owners were an elderly couple who kept to themselves but were always pleasant. Their replacements couldn't have been more different. The first time I met my new neighbor, she seemed normal enough. She introduced herself as she was moving in, mentioned they were from out of state, and commented on how nice the neighborhood was. I offered to help if they needed anything, figuring it's always good to start on the right foot. Things changed within a week. It started small. Her kids using my yard as a shortcut to the park behind our properties, toys left on my lawn, that sort of thing. I didn't make a big deal of it initially. Then one Saturday morning, I noticed someone trimming branches from my oak tree. I went outside to find my new neighbor with a lopper, cutting away at branches that extended slightly over the invisible property line. "Morning," I said. "I see you're doing some trimming." "These branches are hanging over my property," she replied without even looking at me. "They drop leaves in my yard. That tree is over 100 years old, and technically, while you can trim branches that cross onto your property, you should really consult with me first. Some municipalities have ordinances about heritage trees." She finally turned to look at me, clearly annoyed. "Well, the previous owners told us this section was actually part of our property anyway, we're just maintaining what's ours." I tried to explain that wasn't accurate. I had the original survey and knew exactly where the property line was. She dismissed me with a wave. "My husband is an executive at a major company," she said. "We've owned properties in 3 states. I think we know how these things work." I decided to let it go for the moment, but made a mental note to keep an eye on the situation. Things escalated a few weeks later. I came home from work to find a small garden shed being installed, partially on my property. About a quarter of it clearly extended over the line. I approached the workers first, who directed me to my neighbor. "This shed is crossing the property line," I explained, trying to remain calm. "It needs to be moved about 4 feet that way to be fully on your property." "No, it doesn't," she insisted. "This is our land. The previous owners confirmed it when we bought the place." "The previous owners don't determine property lines," I explained. "Surveys and deeds do. I'm actually a surveyor by profession, and I can tell you with certainty that structure is partially on my property." "Well, I'm improving the look of the area," she snapped. "That corner of your yard was just weeds anyway. You should thank me instead of being so territorial." When I persisted, she threatened to report me to our homeowners association for various made-up violations. What she didn't know was that our neighborhood didn't have an HOA. It never had. I decided to document everything from that point forward. I took photos of the shed placement, the tree trimming, and started keeping a log of every interaction. The situation went from bad to worse when she began telling other neighbors I was difficult and unreasonable. A couple of them reached out to me, confused by her stories. I explained the situation, and most seemed to understand my side. About 2 months in, she began parking partially on my section of lawn near the shared driveway entrance, claiming it was her property and that she needed the space for guests. She also redirected some drainage from her gutters toward my property, which caused water to pool near my foundation after heavy rain. The breaking point came when I discovered she had removed a property marker at the back corner of our lots, a small metal stake in the ground that surveyors use to mark boundaries. Removing these is actually illegal in our state. When confronted, she claimed she had never seen any marker and accused me of trying to change the property lines to steal her land. "People like you don't deserve such a nice property anyway," she told me during that heated exchange. "We're the kind of people who should live here. We know how to maintain property values." That's when I decided enough was enough. I contacted my colleague at the county office and arranged for an official resurvey of both properties. I also filed reports about the removed survey marker, the drainage issue, and the encroaching shed with the appropriate municipal departments. My neighbor apparently got wind of this and escalated her campaign against me. She hosted a loud outdoor party where guests parked all over my lawn. When I asked them to move their cars, she told everyone within earshot that I was mentally unstable and confused about property boundaries. What she didn't realize was that one of her guests was actually the daughter of our town's former mayor, who happened to be a friend of mine. This woman was embarrassed by my neighbor's behavior and later contacted me to offer support if needed. I continued gathering evidence methodically. I installed security cameras that covered the property line areas and documented every trespass. I spoke with the previous owners of her house, who confirmed they had never told her anything about the property lines being different than recorded. 3 months into this ordeal, I received a formal notice from an attorney claiming to represent my neighbors. The letter asserted their right to the disputed areas based on verbal agreements with previous owners, and demanded I cease harassment immediately. I responded by hiring my own attorney who specialized in property disputes. We compiled all my evidence, including the new official survey, historical property records, photographic evidence of the removed marker, and statements from other neighbors and the previous owners. The response from my attorney was comprehensive and left no room for debate. It included copies of the original and new surveys, citations of relevant property laws, and evidence of each violation. It also mentioned the illegal removal of the survey marker, which carried potential criminal penalties. 2 days after they received our response, my neighbor's husband appeared at my door. His tone was completely different. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," he said, no longer the confident executive. "We were misinformed about the property boundaries." I stayed firm. "This goes beyond misunderstanding. You've removed survey markers, installed structures on my property, redirected water causing potential foundation damage, and your wife has been spreading false information about me to neighbors." He suggested we work things out, neighbor to neighbor, without getting authorities involved. I explained it was too late for that approach. The authorities were already involved due to their actions. When it became clear I wouldn't back down, they made one final, desperate move. Their attorney sent a letter claiming adverse possession, essentially arguing that because the previous owners had allowed them to use portions of what was actually my land, they now had some claim to it. This was a massive mistake on their part. Adverse possession typically requires years of open use of the property. They had been there less than 6 months. More importantly, it required evidence that previous owners had actually permitted such use, which was demonstrably false. The municipal authorities eventually issued citations for the drainage modification, the unpermitted shed placement, and the removal of the survey marker. They were ordered to relocate the shed, restore proper drainage, and pay fines totaling over $2,000. The official resurvey was registered with the county, firmly establishing the correct property lines. They were given 30 days to comply with moving the shed and fixing the drainage. Throughout this process, other neighbors began sharing their own stories of interactions with them. Borrowed tools never returned, kids told to stay off their lawn while their kids played freely on everyone else's, complaints filed about minor issues like garbage cans left out too long. The resolution came more decisively than I expected. Rather than comply with the orders and live next to someone who had successfully stood up to them, they put their house on the market within 2 weeks of receiving the final notice from the county. Before they moved, I caught my neighbor in the backyard staring bitterly at my oak tree. "You know," I said, "all of this could have been avoided with a simple conversation and mutual respect." "Whatever," she muttered. "This neighborhood isn't what we were promised anyway." As they were loading the moving truck, her husband approached me and actually apologized, admitting his wife had issues with boundaries that had caused problems in previous neighborhoods too. He seemed genuinely embarrassed. After they left, I installed proper boundary fencing and additional security cameras. The neighbors who remained held an impromptu block party the weekend after the moving truck left, and several thanked me for standing my ground. The new family that moved in afterward could not be more different. They actually asked me where the property line was before planting new shrubs, and we've established a friendly, respectful relationship. Looking back, I learned that knowing your rights is essential, but documenting everything is equally important. Entitlement thrives when unchallenged, and sometimes being the reasonable one means not backing down when you're in the right. The property line wasn't just about land, it was about respect and boundaries in all senses of the word. In the end, I kept what was rightfully mine, and the neighborhood returned to the peaceful place it had always been. It turns out having the deed isn't just about owning land. It's about standing your ground when someone tries to take what isn't theirs. The next one is an entitled people's story. For some background, I'm a 36-year-old guy living in a decent suburban neighborhood with my dog Max. He's a gorgeous 3-year-old Siberian husky with striking blue eyes and an unusual coat pattern that makes him look almost like a wolf hybrid, though he's 100% husky. I've had Max since he was 8 weeks old, and he's basically my best friend after my wife passed away 2 years ago from cancer. Max was her dog too, and he's one of the most important connections I still have to her. About 6 months ago, a new couple moved into the house next door. let's call them influencer girl and boyfriend. They seemed nice enough at first, both in their late 20s, always well-dressed, and they mentioned they worked in social media when I first met them. Influencer girl would sometimes stop to pet Max when I was walking him and comment on how photogenic and unique-looking he was. In hindsight, I should have seen the red flags. The problems started small. I'd occasionally catch her taking pictures of Max through the fence when he was in the backyard. Sometimes I'd be walking him and she'd run out with her phone to get a quick shot of your gorgeous dog for my Instagram. It was a bit annoying, but seemed harmless, so I didn't make a big deal of it. Then one day I was scrolling through Instagram, I don't use it much, but my niece had tagged me in something, when I noticed a suggested account with Max's picture as the profile image. Curious, I clicked on it and discovered an entire account called adventures_with_Kodiak with over 50,000 followers. Every single post was pictures and videos of my dog, but the account was claiming he was their dog named Kodiak. There were elaborate captions about their life with Kodiak and how they'd rescued him from a difficult situation. I was livid. Going through the posts, I could see that some were pictures taken through my fence, but others appeared to be taken in my yard or even inside my house. I immediately went next door to confront them. When I knocked, influencer girl answered, all smiles until she saw my face. "You need to take down that Instagram account right now," I said, barely containing my anger. "Those are pictures of my dog, and some of them look like you've been trespassing on my property to take them." Her smile faltered. "Oh, that's just for entertainment purposes. It's called content creation. Everyone embellishes a little online. I don't care what it's called. You're pretending my dog is yours. Take the account down." Boyfriend appeared behind her. "Hey man, calm down. It's just social media. It's not hurting anyone." "You're using my dog to get sponsorships and followers," I said, pointing to a post where they were promoting some fancy dog food with Max's image. "That's not okay." Influencer girl's demeanor completely changed. "Look, that account is gaining serious traction. We've already got sponsorship deals lined up. Do you have any idea how hard it is to build a following like that? We could cut you in for 10% if you let us use your dog occasionally for photos." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Absolutely not. Take the account down by tomorrow, or I'm reporting you to Instagram and the police for trespassing and fraud." They reluctantly agreed, and I went home thinking that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, I came home from work to find my backyard gate open and Max missing. I panicked and immediately ran next door. No answer. Their car was gone. I called the police to report my dog stolen, then started canvassing the neighborhood, showing Max's picture to everyone I encountered. A teenage girl who lived across the street came forward and said, "I saw your neighbors putting a husky in their car around noon. I thought it was weird because I know that's your dog, but they were acting like it was totally normal." The police took statements but said there wasn't much they could do immediately since it was just a dog, and the neighbors might claim it was all a misunderstanding. They advised me to wait and see if they returned. I was not about to just sit around. I posted about the theft on every social media platform and local community group. I called every animal shelter and vet clinic within 50 miles. Then I remembered the Instagram account and checked it again. Sure enough, there was a new post from just an hour ago. Influencer girl posing with Max in what looked like a hotel room, announcing that they had finally rescued Kodiak from his neglectful owner and were starting a new chapter together. The post was getting thousands of likes and sympathetic comments. I immediately took screenshots and sent them to the police officer handling my case. Then I noticed something in the background of the photo, a hotel notepad with the hotel's logo visible. It was a chain hotel, but it appeared to be one of their higher-end locations about 30 miles away. I called the police again with this information. They said they'd look into it, but it might take time to get a warrant. Time I wasn't willing to waste, so I drove to the hotel myself. At the front desk, I showed them Max's photo and explained the situation. The receptionist was sympathetic but couldn't give out room information. However, she did confirm that a couple matching their description had checked in with a dog. She agreed to call the room and say there was an emergency package delivery that needed a signature. When boyfriend came down to the lobby, the look on his face when he saw me was priceless. Before he could run, I loudly announced, "That's the man who stole my dog," making sure everyone in the lobby heard. The hotel security guard moved to block the exit. "Dude, this is a misunderstanding," boyfriend said, looking nervous. "We're just dog sitting." "Then you won't mind if the police sort this out," I replied as two officers entered the lobby. I'd called them on my way over with the new information. The officers escorted us up to the room, where we found influencer girl doing a photo shoot with Max, who was wearing some kind of designer dog outfit. The room was full of lighting equipment and expensive cameras. Max immediately ran to me, nearly knocking me over in excitement. "This man is harassing us," influencer girl shrieked to the officers. "This is our dog Kodiak. We've had him for years." "That's not true," I said calmly, pulling out my phone. "I have photos of Max from when he was a puppy, his AKC registration, microchip information, and vet records all in my name." I showed the officers everything, including the screenshots of their fake Instagram account. The officers checked Max's microchip with a scanner they'd brought, thank God I'd had him chipped, and confirmed he was registered to me. They handcuffed both influencer girl and boyfriend and informed them they were being arrested for theft and filing a false police report. Apparently they had reported me for harassment while I was searching for Max. As they were being led away, influencer girl was still arguing. "You don't understand. Do you know how many followers we have? This dog could make us rich. He's wasted on some boring average guy." I was just relieved to have Max back, but this wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. After bringing Max home and making sure he was okay, thankfully he seemed unharmed and happy to be home, I decided to do some digging into my neighbors. Something about this whole situation felt too bizarre to be an isolated incident. Plus, I was angry. They hadn't just stolen my dog, they'd invaded my privacy and tried to profit off of Max and my grief. I started with simple Google searches of their names, but found very little. Then I tried searching their Instagram handles and other social media accounts. That's when things got interesting. I found several defunct accounts under slightly different names, all following the same pattern. Cute animal content that suddenly stopped after a few months. On a hunch, I checked local news reports in the cities tagged in these old accounts. In 3 different cities over the past 5 years, there were reports of pets being stolen, specifically photogenic, unusual-looking pets. None of the reports named my neighbors, but the timing and locations matched up perfectly with their social media activity. I compiled everything I found and sent it to the detective now handling their case. 2 days later, he called me. "You might have stumbled onto something bigger than you realize," he said. "We got a warrant to search their house and found evidence connecting them to at least 7 other pet thefts across 3 states. They've been doing this for years, stealing animals, using them to build social media followings, then selling sponsorships and merchandise." I was shocked. What happens now? They're facing multiple felony charges: interstate theft, fraud, criminal trespassing, filing false reports. And since they were transporting stolen animals across state lines and using them for commercial purposes, there might even be federal charges. After hanging up, I sat down on my couch with Max curled up beside me. I felt relieved that they were facing consequences, but still unsettled by the whole experience. That's when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this the owner of the husky that was stolen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "My name is Samantha. I'm a reporter with the local news. We're doing a story on what appears to be a serial pet theft ring that was just broken up. Would you be willing to talk to us about your experience?" I thought about it for a moment. If I went public with this story, maybe it would help other pet owners be more vigilant. Maybe someone who had lost a pet to these people would see it and get some closure. "Yes," I said. "I'll talk to you." The next day, a news crew came to my house. I told them everything: the fake Instagram account, the theft, how I tracked them down, and what the police had discovered. The reporter also interviewed the detective, who confirmed that this couple had been running this scam for years, stealing pets, creating social media personas for them, and using them to secure sponsorship deals and sell merchandise. The story aired that evening and immediately went viral. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up with calls from national news outlets wanting interviews. Max and I were suddenly minor celebrities. Several days later, I received a call from a woman in Oklahoma who was in tears. "I think those people stole my Scottish Fold cat 3 years ago. I never knew what happened to her, but I recognized her in the photos on their old account. The police are looking into it now. Thank you for exposing them." Similar calls followed. A family in Colorado whose rare breed of parrot had disappeared. A college student whose uniquely colored Maine Coon had vanished from his apartment. All of them had stories that fit the pattern, and the police were now investigating these connections. As for influencer girl and boyfriend, they were denied bail due to being flight risks. Their case was making headlines nationwide, and more charges were being added as more victims came forward. Their fancy lawyer tried to argue that they were just overzealous animal lovers who got carried away with their social media aspirations, but no one was buying it. I was asked to testify at their preliminary hearing. Walking into the courtroom and seeing them in jumpsuits, looking far less glamorous than their Instagram personas, was surreal. They couldn't even look me in the eye as I described how they had not only stolen Max, but had been planning this for months, systematically invading my privacy and exploiting my dog for profit. The judge didn't seem impressed with their tearful apologies. He set their case for trial and maintained the high bail amount, ensuring they'd remain in custody until then. In an unexpected twist, several pet food and accessory companies that had been deceived by the couple reached out to me. They'd paid for sponsorships thinking Max or Kodiak belonged to these influencers, and now they wanted to make things right. One company even offered Max a legitimate modeling contract, with all proceeds going to an animal rescue organization of my choice. I chose a rescue that specializes in helping pets who have lost their owners to cancer in honor of my late wife. It felt like bringing something positive out of this horrible situation. The most satisfying moment came about a month after the arrest. Their landlord contacted me explaining that they had abandoned their lease and he needed to clear out their belongings. Among the items left behind, he found several SD cards containing thousands of photos. Many were of Max, clearly taken by trespassing on my property, but there were also photos of dozens of other animals, potential targets they had been stalking. The SD cards were turned over to the police as evidence, providing even more proof of their calculated predatory behavior. The prosecutor called it a smoking gun that significantly strengthened their case. As the trial date approached, their lawyer reached out with a plea deal offer. They would plead guilty to reduced charges if I agreed to a filmed reconciliation meeting that they could use to salvage some of their reputation. Apparently, even facing prison time, they were still thinking about their social media presence. I declined. Some things can't be fixed with a staged apology for Instagram. 6 months after they stole Max, influencer girl and boyfriend stood in court and pleaded guilty to multiple felony counts. The judge sentenced them each to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation during which they were banned from owning pets or using social media for commercial purposes. As for Max and me, we're doing well. The whole ordeal brought us closer together, if that's even possible. I've installed better security around my house, including cameras and a more secure fence. The unexpected fame from the case has died down, which is fine by me. I'm a private person, and the irony of becoming temporarily famous for exposing social media frauds isn't lost on me. Sometimes I take Max to events at animal shelters to raise awareness about pet theft, which is apparently a growing problem in the age of social media. Several of the other victims I connected with through this case have become friends, and we've started an informal support network for people whose pets have been stolen. The neighbor's house sat empty for a few months before a nice family moved in, with a golden retriever that Max loves to play with through the fence. They asked for my permission before taking any pictures of our dogs together, which I deeply appreciated. I still miss my wife every day, and I think she would have been proud of how I fought for Max. He was her dog too, after all. Sometimes when he curls up next to me on the couch, in the spot where she used to sit, I can almost feel her there with us, relieved that her beloved dog is safe and where he belongs. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole experience, it's that the line between online personas and reality has become dangerously blurred for some people. Influencer girl and boyfriend were so obsessed with creating the perfect online life that they were willing to steal, lie, and hurt others to maintain that illusion. It's a sobering reminder of how social media can bring out the worst in people. But it's also shown me the best in people. The detective who took a just a dog case seriously, the hotel receptionist who helped me without hesitation, the reporter who made sure this story was heard, and all the strangers who reached out with support and similar stories. Max is snoring next to me as I type this, completely unaware of his brush with Instagram fame. To him, life is about walks in the park, treats and cuddles on the couch, not likes and followers. I think we could all learn something from that perspective. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your supportive comments. Many people have asked for pet tax, so here's a link to a picture of Max, with his face partially blurred for privacy reasons. And no, the irony of sharing his picture after everything that happened isn't lost on me. Also, to answer some common questions, yes, some of the other stolen pets were recovered, but sadly not all of them. The investigation is ongoing, and they're looking into whether other people were involved in the theft ring. Max is doing great and loves his new secure backyard. No, I will not be writing a book or selling the movie rights, though several people have suggested it. Yes, I have receipts, microchip records, and AKC registration for Max. Always document your pet ownership, folks. The next one is a malicious compliances story. A couple of years ago, I was in the Navy and assigned duties on board a ship. At the start of the story, I was an extremely junior service member, lowest rank in my shop. Typically, on board the ship, our usual uniform was coveralls in our department, and we arrived and left from the ship when in home port in civilian clothes. Now we were moving up the river, about 4 hours underway, about an hour driving distance, for a week to onload weapons stores for a training exercise underway coming up later that month. Typically, when leaving the area of the port of record, which we would for the training exercise, we're also required to have suitable transit uniforms aboard in case we pull into port elsewhere. For this week-long weapons onload, I had no plans to leave the ship, and we weren't leaving our port of record's geographical area and would be returning to our home berth again before the upcoming trip, so I didn't prep my uniforms to bring on board, seeing no use for them. At the last minute, our medical department scheduled medical appointments on our behalf at a small satellite clinic at the weapons station, with no input of our own, and informed me I'd have a dental appointment while there. I immediately went to my supervisor with the issue because I had no suitable uniforms for off-ship use on board, and we were required to attend medical appointments in uniform. I get written up for not having my uniforms. Now, there is no specific policies on which types or how many uniforms are required to be on board, but there are specific policies on having sea bag inspections and what is required to be present for them, so my write-up was for not having an inspection-ready sea bag available. Copy that, makes sense. When we get home that weekend, I move all my military uniforms aboard, bringing a full inspection-ready sea bag to the ship as required, and leaving no uniforms at home. Everything's peachy. Fast forward a few years, and I have commanding officer's approval to miss an upcoming late-minute rescheduled underway due to prior scheduled leave in order to re-enlist. While I'm halfway across the country re-enlisting, my department fails an important inspection for our deployment workups. The inspectors work with the ship's command to reschedule, and they adjust the underway schedule last minute again. Now they're getting underway for a re-inspect the night before my leave ends, and the re-inspection starts the day I return from leave. The inspectors will be ferried to the ship the morning of by water taxi. They ask me to curtail my leave a day early, buy new tickets, and show up to help with this re-inspect. I inform them that I would prefer not to dole out thousands of dollars of my own money for last-minute changes to travel arrangements because of their failure, but understand if ordered I can financially do so. Since my leave was approved by the CO to miss an underway, I'd like verbiage from the CO that my leave has been rescinded, recalling me. And if I receive such, it'll make me question my dedication to re-enlisting in a Navy that doesn't care about my financial well-being, meaning I'll leave the 6 months earlier than they expected when I get out of the Navy instead of re-enlist, and won't return with signed re-enlistment papers. They balked, of course, and had me report the day my leave was originally planned to end. They decided I'd catch a ride with the water taxi and all the senior officer inspectors for the hour trip to meet the ship. Sounded interesting. The stinger? I asked them what I should wear for the water taxi ride, as all my uniforms were on the ship. They freaked out and asked why all my uniforms were on the ship, naturally. I explained I was ordered to do so by my supervisor and received a counseling chit for not having left all my uniforms on the ship previously. My options? Some recently cleaned coveralls. I'd take them home for laundry, ensuring I kept 2 pairs on the ship as required for sea bag rules from before my leave, or my civilian clothes. Why? Because that's what I was told to do the last time a shipboard uniform use issue came up. So yeah, there I was, a junior E.5, in civilian clothes, on board a chartered water taxi with a bunch of 04/05/06S in their uniforms, at 5 in the morning on the way to redo a previously failed inspection. The next one is an entitled people story. I work at a copy center, we print documents and photos. At 9:54 p.m., a guy came in to print business cards. First of all, why the fuck is he here 5 minutes before closing time? Second, he came in with something that can't be solved in 5 minutes because A, it's fucking business cards, and B, he started asking a bunch of stupid follow-up questions, meaning he had no idea what he needed. You're probably guessing that business cards are printed and sliced on a machine in large runs. We have a minimum of 50+ pieces in our production facility, and that it's not done in a regular office with a Xerox machine. Even if it isn't, that's fine, because you'll likely listen politely to my explanation, realize you won't get the results you want now, and go home afterwards. He didn't go home, but continued to ask if it was possible to print on a regular sheet of paper right now. I, knowing the tricks of Xerox, said that no, double-sided printing of business cards will not work. It prints with a shift of a few millimeters, and if you adjust the layout of business cards to this shift, you just be fucking tired of moving the shit by millimeter on the screen, but the result will not be achieved. And the color will definitely not be the same. He continued to insist that he needed these stupid business cards and asked how long it would take me to adjust this layout, to which he received a direct answer. None. I will not be doing it, especially now. But even after that, he did not calm down and asked to make him at least one-sided. To make him finally go away, I even printed him a couple of sheets of his business cards on plain paper. I'll clarify, I don't mind getting into a person's situation if they urgently need to do something, to help them even if my working hours are over. But this one came with a blissful smile and a pile of questions, not giving a fuck about the fact that it's not my working hours. What killed me was when he started asking irrelevant questions like, where do you go to college? Again, nothing wrong with small talk, but not at 10 p.m. I realized he's a total jerk, and at this pace, he's going to sit here until he's tongue-tied or ends up starting to hit on me. I asked him if he would take these papers, which he didn't like the color of course, and he said no. So I pointed him to the door with a straight hand and said goodbye. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.